Hey everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Today, we're diving deep into the heart of ancient Rome, a place of power, intrigue, and unspeakable ambition. Imagine walls draped in silk and secrecy, where loyalty was a luxury and betrayal a daily threat. In this world, a woman lived whose name became legend and a chilling warning all at once. Her beauty was her sharpest weapon, her hunger for power, her ultimate curse. She was the wife of Emperor Claudius, and many called her the most dangerous woman in Rome. Her name? Valyria Messalina, the fatal empress. You've probably heard snippets of her story, but trust me, there's so much more to uncover. This isn't just a tale of ancient scandal. It's a profound look at how power can corrupt, how ambition can destroy, and how one woman left an indelible mark on one of the greatest empires in history. So, buckle up, because we're about to peel back the layers of myth and history to understand the real Messalina. Valyria Messalina wasn't just some random figure. She was born directly into privilege, a descendant of the imperial family itself. Think about that, cousin to the infamous Caligula, and later niece by marriage to Claudius. From the moment she could understand anything, she was taught one brutal lesson. In Rome, survival wasn't about being good or kind, it was about control. It was about wielding influence. The imperial palace, despite all its grandeur, was a viper's nest where status was incredibly fragile. One wrong move, one perceived slight, and your world could crumble. Messalina learned early on that charm, cunning, and calculated alliances could disarm enemies far more effectively than any sword. She wasn't just observing power, she was dissecting it. She understood how it worked, and more importantly, how to make men willingly surrender it to her. When Emperor Claudius surprisingly took the throne in 41 CE after Caligula's assassination, few expected him to last. He was seen as scholarly, a bit awkward, hesitant, and easily manipulated. History often paints him as a bumbling academic. But Messalina, barely 20 years old at this point, saw something different. Opportunity. This wasn't a weakness. It was a blank canvas for her ambition. Within months, she was far more than just an empress. She became the shadow that truly ruled Rome. Claudius, by all accounts, absolutely adored her. He was captivated. He showered her with immense estates, prestigious titles, and even granted her the unprecedented power to intervene in political trials. Imagine that level of trust. To please Messalina was to rise within the empire. To cross her, even in the slightest, almost certainly meant ruin. Her influence wasn't just growing, it was exploding. Soon, petitions for favors, judgments, and promotions weren't just brought to the emperor, they were brought directly to Messalina. She could make or unmake any Roman's future with a single whisper, a subtle nod, or a flick of her wrist.
Ow.
She had become the true gatekeeper of power. But with this incredible power came a dark obsession. The more she controlled, the more she wanted. It wasn't just loyalty she craved, it was absolute submission. To Rome's elite, she became a terrifying force. They started calling her the Empress of Shadows, a woman whose presence loomed over every decision, every political maneuver, every alliance she forged, every friendship she cultivated, was built on a volatile mix of fear and often illicit desire. Messalina began using her position to systematically eliminate anyone she perceived as a rival or an obstacle. Senators who dared to oppose her mysteriously disappeared or were exiled on trumped-up charges. Wealthy women whose fortunes she coveted found their estates suddenly seized by imperial decree. Even the emperor's most trusted advisors, seasoned politicians who had survived countless intrigues, trembled in her presence. They knew that her radiant smile was often just a mask, hiding a calculating mind and a ruthless will. There's one infamous episode that truly captures the sheer scale of her control and audacity. She reportedly convinced Claudius to execute a man simply because he owned a beautiful garden that she wanted for herself. Think about that for a second. A man lost his life because the empress desired his property. That was the chilling level of her power. Every whim she expressed became law, every desire an unbreakable command. Rome was slowly realizing that behind the emperor's public throne, there sat another throne, invisible, yes, but absolutely absolute. But even empires built on fear and unchecked ambition eventually crumble from within. By 48 CE, Messalina's power, and crucially her arrogance, had grown to an uncontrollable, dizzying height. She began plotting a new life, a grand future where she would be even more powerful, and crucially, one without Claudius. In secret, she forged a new, daring alliance with a charismatic Roman consul named Gaius Silius. Silius was widely admired for his ambition and his reckless courage, traits that clearly appealed to Messalina's own daring spirit. In what can only be described as an act of astonishing hubris, they did the unthinkable. They held a public wedding ceremony, complete with witnesses, vows, and all the trappings, while Emperor Claudius was conveniently away from Rome. The most powerful woman in the empire had just openly committed treason, not in secret, but in front of the entire city. When word finally reached Claudius, who was recuperating at Ostia, his initial shock quickly morphed into incandescent fury. The Senate, aghast, called it madness. But Rome? Rome called it the greatest scandal in imperial history, a tale that would be whispered and retold for centuries. Claudius returned to Rome, not as the scholarly, bumbling emperor, but as a man consumed by vengeance. Messalina, realizing the depth of her miscalculation, fled to her opulent gardens, the very same place where she had once plotted against so many others. Cornered, betrayed, even by some of her own allies who sensed the tide turning, she desperately begged for mercy. But this time none came. It's said that even in that moment, Claudius hesitated, perhaps still grappling with his conflicted feelings for the woman he had once adored. But one of his officers, sensing the emperor's wavering resolve, gave the decisive order. Valyria Messalina was executed in silence, without a trial, without a final farewell, her dramatic life ending in absolute quiet. History remembers her not primarily for her noble birth or her captivating beauty, but for the stark, terrifying danger of unchecked power. To her countless enemies, she was a monster, a symbol of corruption and cruelty. To her few loyal allies, she was a formidable, almost goddess-like figure. But to Rome itself, she became a mirror, reflecting the empire's own intoxicating obsession with dominance and control. Valyria Messalina's story, in its essence, isn't just one of lust or scandal. It's a profound narrative of obsession, the empire's own reflection staring back at itself. A civilization drunk on power, consumed by its insatiable desire to dominate everything and everyone around it. What do you think about Messalina? Was she a victim of a male-dominated world, or a ruthless architect of her own downfall? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this deep dive into ancient Roman history, please hit that like button and subscribe for more fascinating stories from the past. Your support helps us keep bringing these incredible tales to life. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.